A Roman emperor writes in his tent at the edge of a frozen battlefield. It is the year 174 AD. Germanic tribes press against the Danube frontier. The emperor's name is Marcus Aurelius. The most powerful man in the world is reminding himself, you could leave life right now. This is Stoicism at its most dramatic. But Marcus Aurelius was not alone. Before him stood a wealthy political insider forced to commit suicide. And beside that insider stood a former slave who taught that chains cannot bind the mind. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. 3 Stoics. 3 radically different lives. 1 philosophy. But how did they truly differ? And which one speaks most powerfully to us today? Stoicism before the Romans. Stoicism did not begin in Rome. It began in Athens around 300 BC, when Zeno of Citium taught beneath the Stoa Poikio, the painted porch. His philosophy emphasized virtue, rationality, and living in accordance with nature. By the 1st century AD, Stoicism had traveled from Greece to Rome. In Rome, it transformed. It became practical, political, personal, and its 3 most famous voices would emerge not from classrooms, but from crisis. 2. Seneca, the philosopher. Inside power. Seneca was born around 04 BC in Corduba in Roman Spain. He came from privilege. His father was a wealthy rhetorician. Seneca was educated in Rome. He studied philosophy, rhetoric, and law. He rose quickly in public life. In AD 41, Emperor Claudius exiled Seneca to Corsica. The charge, alleged adultery with Julia Livilla. He spent 8 years in exile. But in AD 49, everything changed. Claudius' wife, Agrippina, recalled Seneca to Rome. She wanted him to tutor her young son. That son was Nero. When Nero became emperor in AD 54 at just 16 years old, Seneca became one of the most powerful men in Rome. Alongside the Praetorian prefect Boris, Seneca guided imperial policy. The first years of Nero's reign were stable. Some historians call them the Quinquennium Nerones, 5 relatively good years. Seneca wrote during this time essays like on anger, on the shortness of life, on mercy. He advised restraint, self-control, humanity and power. But Nero changed. By AD 59, Nero had murdered his mother Agrippina. Executions increased. Paranoia grew. Seneca asked to retire. Nero refused at first. In AD 65, the Pisonian conspiracy, a failed plot to assassinate Nero, was uncovered. Seneca was accused of involvement. There was little evidence. But Nero ordered him to die. Tacitus, in his Annals, records what followed. Seneca calmly opened his veins in a warm bath. He spoke philosophy to his friends as he bled. When the blood flowed too slowly, he took poison, possibly hemlock. Finally, he suffocated in steam. His death was deliberate, controlled, stoic. Seneca represents Stoicism in politics. A philosopher navigating corruption. A man wealthy, influential, yet preaching detachment. Critics have long noted the contradiction. How could a Stoic preach simplicity while amassing wealth? Seneca answered this himself. Wealth, he argued, is not evil, only dependence on it is. His Stoicism is intellectual, rhetorical, elegant. It is Stoicism from the Senate chamber. 3. Epictetus, the slave who became free. Epictetus was born around AD 50 in Hierapolis, in present-day Turkey. Unlike Seneca, Epictetus began life as property. He was enslaved in Rome by Epaphroditus, a secretary to Emperor Nero. Ancient sources, including later accounts by Simplicius, report that Epictetus was physically disabled, possibly from abuse. The exact cause is debated, but his philosophy would become sharper than any blade in Rome. He studied Stoicism under Musonius Rufus, a prominent Stoic teacher. At some point, Epictetus gained his freedom. In AD 89, Emperor Domitian expelled philosophers from Rome. Epictetus relocated to Nicopolis in Greece. There, he founded a school. He wrote nothing himself. His student, Arrian, later a historian, recorded his teachings in the Discourses and the Enchiridion. Epictetus taught something radical. There are things which are up to us, and things which are not. Not your body, not your reputation, not your wealth, not your office, only your judgments, your choices, your will. For a former slave, this was revolutionary. He redefined freedom. A slave can be free if his mind is free. An emperor can be enslaved if he is ruled by fear. Epictetus' Stoicism is direct, severe, practical. He uses simple language. He demands discipline. He does not discuss politics from inside the palace. He speaks from the margins. His Stoicism is forged in hardship. 4. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of self-examination. Marcus Aurelius was born in AD 121 into a wealthy Roman family. At age 17, Emperor Antoninus Pius adopted him as heir. Marcus was trained in rhetoric and philosophy. He studied under Junius Rusticus, who introduced him to Epictetus' teachings. In AD 161, Marcus became emperor. His reign was not peaceful. War against Parthia, the Antonine Plague, Germanic invasions along the Danube. He ruled during crisis. Unlike Seneca, Marcus was not advising power. He was power. And unlike Epictetus, he was not teaching students. He was writing to himself. His personal notebook, later titled Meditations, was never intended for publication. He wrote in Greek. He reminded himself of mortality. He warned himself against pride. Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everybody will have forgotten you. He slept in military camps. He governed while at war. In AD 180, he died in Vindobona, modern Vienna, likely from illness during campaign. Marcus Aurelius represents Stoicism under ultimate responsibility. He cannot withdraw. He cannot resign. He must act. His Stoicism is reflective, ethical, leadership-focused. It is Stoicism in command, the key differences. Now the contrasts become clear. Social position: Seneca, elite aristocrat, political insider. Epictetus, former slave, teacher. Marcus, emperor of Rome, three social extremes. Relationship to power: Seneca advised power. Epictetus rejected political involvement. Marcus embodied power. Writing style: Seneca writes essays and letters, polished, persuasive. Epictetus speaks in lectures, sharp, confrontational. Marcus writes private reflections, intimate and self-critical. Tone: Seneca is rhetorical and literary. Epictetus is disciplined and instructional. Marcus is introspective and humble. Core emphasis: Seneca, managing emotions, especially anger and time. Epictetus, control of judgment and inner freedom. Marcus, duty, mortality, and moral leadership. Which is best? History does not rank philosophers like athletes, but influence can be measured. Seneca shaped Renaissance thinkers and early Christian writers. Epictetus directly shaped Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius became the symbolic philosopher king. Today, Meditations remains one of the most widely read Stoic texts in the world. If influence across centuries is the measure, Marcus Aurelius often stands tallest. If clarity and practical instruction define greatness, many argue for Epictetus. If literary brilliance and political realism matter most, Seneca commands attention. 7. A personal judgment. If forced to choose, many modern readers gravitate toward Epictetus. Why? Because his central message is universal. You cannot control the world. You can control your response. In an age of social media outrage and global instability, that principle feels urgent. But Marcus Aurelius may be the most human, an emperor doubting himself, writing reminders against arrogance, and Seneca may be the most relatable to those navigating ambition and compromise. Each Stoic reflects a different human condition: power, oppression, responsibility. In the end, Stoicism is not one voice. It is a senator bleeding in a bath, a slave teaching freedom, an emperor riding by candlelight before battle. 3 men, 3 destinies. One question that still echoes: what truly is under your control?